ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। So, we are doing Drg Drashya Viveka. Last time we saw verse number 7. Let us read verse number 6 and quickly recap and proceed further. Chichayaveshato buddho bhanam distudvita sthita ekahankrutiranyasyat antःकरणरूपिणी छायाहङ्कारयोरैक्यं तप्तायः पिण्डवन्मतम् तदहङ्कारतादात्म्यात् देहश्चेतनतामगात्. So, we have seen that consciousness is one thing and body, mind, intellect are another. These two are totally different things. One is Paramarthic reality, which means absolute reality. What is that? Consciousness is absolute reality. Paramarthic Satta. It is called Paramarthic Satta, which means it has absolute reality, which is one without a second and non-changing. And it is the real thing. And there is another thing which we see, that is body, mind, intellect, and this entire creation. Of course, the body, mind, intellect and ego falls within the creation. Now, in spite of body, mind, intellect, ego, etc. being inert, jada rupam, and yet they behave as if it is conscious. How come that has happened? Last time we saw that samsara or sense of limitation cannot belong to consciousness because it is chit rupa. It is of the nature of knowledge, full, complete happiness, and this is body, mind, intellect are inert. Neither sense of limitation can belong here because it is jadam and that is conscious. Then how come there is an entity which feels limited? So, to explain this, Acharyas they say, Sampradaya says, what does it say? That there is union of these two, which is called ahankara, and that is really speaking ego, and it suffers from the sense of limitation. But how did these two come in contact? How did the body, the assembly of the body, mind, intellect, vital air, etc., how come they which are really inert appear to be sentient? How did these two come in contact? Because we know that only two things which belong to same reality can come together. Just as if we want to tie the rope with say something, then it can be done. The rope can be tied to this object because they belong to the same reality. But rope cannot be tied to this space. Similarly, consciousness is one kind of reality and body, mind, intellect is another kind of reality. How did these two come together? Contact between them is not possible. So, they say that Chit Chaya Veshuto Buddho Bhanam. It is because of the reflected consciousness. Consciousness, when it gets reflected in the subtle body, which means in the Antakarana, in the mind, and mind in the Antakarana also, there are four things. Which are those four things? Intellect, mind, ahankara and chitta. These four things are there. In that, consciousness gets reflected in ahankara, in buddhi, and that too in buddhi. Then buddhi has two aspects. Which are those two aspects? It is, one is I thought, another one is you thought. Now consciousness can get reflected in the subtler one. Which is the subtler of these two? I thought. Ahankruti is subtler. So consciousness gets reflected here. So this is actually inert and this is conscious. So real contact is not possible. Contact between two similar satta, similar degrees of realities is possible. So consciousness cannot directly contact body, mind, intellect, but when it gets reflected in the intellect, then that is how contact is possible. So it has to come down to the reality of this body, mind, intellect. You follow? I will give you an example. There is no contact between electricity and the bulb. Directly, electricity or power cannot contact the bulb, light, the bulb which has the light in it. Now, only and only when electricity passes through that, the contact is possible in the tungsten filament which is there in the bulb. See, I will show you the bulb. I have kept it ready today. See, this is the bulb. Now, straight away, directly, electricity cannot contact this, but it can contact when it touches the tungsten filament in this bulb. So, when tungsten filament and power, that is electricity, when they touch, then it gets conducted. If there was a wooden rod in this, it would not have got conducted. But since there is a tungsten filament, it can catch electricity. So that is how this then begins to shine. Means then when we switch on the light, this is lighted. Similarly, consciousness gets reflected in the buddhi, and this buddhi has again two aspects. Which are those two aspects? I thought, you thought. I thought means aham vritti. I thought means subject, and you thought means idam vritti. So first this one gets lighted, this one gets conscious. Which one? I thought. Now then what happens? Then consciousness passes on from I thought to you thought, which means I thought is aham vritti, ego, and then passes on to the mind, vital organ, vital air, sense organs, and then to the body. You follow? From subtle progression is from subtler to the gross. So the subtlest aspect in the body mind intellect complex is what? Is that intellect, which has two aspects: I thought, you thought. I thought means ahankara, ego, and the rest of them are mind and other things. So first of all, this I thought gets conscious, and then from that consciousness progresses. And what happens? Then the you thought, that means mind, intellect, sense organs, they get conscious, then sense organs, vital air get conscious, and then deha chetanatam agat. Then the body becomes conscious. This is how from consciousness to aham vritti, to idam vritti, and then to the body. This is how consciousness passes. So our question was, how this body, which is inert and yet it appears sentient, that is because of the reflected consciousness. Just as sun in the sky gets reflected in the bucket full of water. So water is that kind of thing which receives the sunlight, and sun gets reflected here, and then the whole thing gets full of light. I mean, then the whole thing is lighted up. But who has received? Who has received it first? Water. Because water is that kind of substance. Had the bucket been there without the water, bucket would not have been lighted up, because it doesn't have that kind of surface. It is not that kind of substance. Whereas water is transparent and it receives the sunlight. This is an example. Similarly here it is said, this is chit chaya veshato buddho bhanam. It is because of the infusion or the luminosity of consciousness getting reflected in the intellect, that first intellect gets, that is antakarana gets lighted up, and antakarana has two parts. In that first aham vritti gets reflected, and then it becomes conscious, and then idam vritti, and then the whole body. So this is how the body, which is even though inert, appears sentient. Understood? Then, so like in the example of the electricity and tungsten filament, electricity cannot directly light up the bulb, but it is the tungsten filament in the bulb which has contact with power. Similarly, so electricity needs what? The tungsten filament to be able to light up this. Otherwise, electricity and bulb are of different realities. So a media is required, not an ordinary media, a media which can receive, which is capable of doing that. Then this two, even though belonging to different realities, let us say electricity is one kind, we can say that in example that electricity is paramarthik reality, and this bulb is in the place of vyavharik reality. This is absolute reality, this is empirical reality. There is no meeting point of these two. The twain cannot meet, but it is the tungsten filament which makes this union possible. Similarly, consciousness is paramarthik satta, body mind is body mind intellect, this complex is vyavharik satta, they cannot come together. But it is through what? It is just as in that it was tungsten filament, here it is intellect. In the intellect also, intellect has two parts, which I thought, you thought. Which one is more capable of receiving this consciousness, reflecting the consciousness, which one of the two? I thought. So, it is this ahankriti, ahamvritti, which receives, that is that part of the antakarana which has ahankara in it, ahamvritti, which receives in which consciousness gets reflected. So, this is how consciousness, as it were, comes down to the level of body. Otherwise, it is not possible. So, you follow, this is what has happened. Then we said that ahankara is what? In the verse number 7 it said that chaya hankara yoho aikyam taptaya pindavan matam. The aikya, oneness between chaya, chit chaya and ahankara. Ahankara means here subtle body. In that subtle body, what is that? Intellect. It is intellect which receives the consciousness, which receives the reflected consciousness. It is in the intellect that consciousness gets reflected. Let us put it that way. It is in the intellect, even in the intellect, in the I thought, consciousness gets reflected. So, now what has happened? Which two things came together? I thought and that reflected consciousness. What kind of union is this? The union here is compared to taptaya pindavan matam. The author says it is like the fire and iron ball coming together. It is like what? It is said that it is like the iron and fire coming together. Iron is round, it is like a ball, and fire is there. When these two come together, then what happens? A third entity is born, as it were. What? So far there was fire and there was iron ball. These two things were different. But when they came together, when the iron ball is heated in fire, then what happens? It looks like one thing, fireball. Then it is difficult to separate. When they were alone, when fire was fire and iron ball was not in contact with fire, so far there were two things. But when that iron ball is heated in fire, then what happens? Then we can no more distinguish as fire and iron ball. These two have sort of merged. Now it is difficult to distinguish them, which means now a third entity is, it looks as if there is a third thing. What? Fireball. When we say fireball, understand, it has properties of both. Fireball. Fireball means it has properties of fire, it is hot, it is blazing, it is red color. All this indicate to the property of fire. And then ball we say, fireball. Ball, what does it indicate? It shows that iron thing is there, because fire is not round and iron is not red color. But red color of the fire and roundness of iron have come together to give rise to the third thing. A new entity is born, as it were. What? Fireball, which has properties of both. Fireball has property of fire also, and it has property of iron also. They have come together. Two properties are now merged. Similarly, what is similarly in the case of Darshtanta? Consciousness is there and body-mind complex is there. Okay, there were two things, but now they have come together through reflected consciousness. So now means sun is reflected in the bucket of water, and we see the reflection of the sun in the bucket. Because of that, the whole thing is lighted up. Similarly here, consciousness first lighted up what? Intellect. In the intellect, I thought. And because of that, the whole body is, then from the I thought to you thought, then that is you thought means mind, intellect, sense organs, vital air and the body. Everything is now conscious. So, this is a new entity, but it has properties of both. How properties of both? The consciousness which the body exhibits, which the mind exhibits, which the intellect exhibits, which sense organs exhibits, pranas, vital air exhibits sentience. Where does it belong to? Whose is that property? Is it inherent to the body? Is it inherent to the mind? Is it inherent to the pranas? Is it inherent to the vital organs? No. It is inherent to the consciousness, but it is infused here. Okay. Now, this one, this ego, this new entity which is born says, I am small. My height is only 5 inches. My weight is 55 kg. I have wheatish color. All this fellow says. When it says all this, who says this? Body is inert. Who says this? It is that I-ness. That when we say I, where does this I belong to? It belongs to consciousness. But now it says I am small. I am only 5 inches. Consciousness is not 5 inches. Consciousness has no shape, no weight, no color, nothing, no shape. Then how did it say? It could say this, it felt all this looking at the body. The properties of the body are looked upon as belonging to itself. This is ahankara. This is ego. Just as I told you last time, sun in the sky, looking at its reflection in the bucket of water, what does it feel? Oh, I am small. Oh, I am only this much. Arey, you are in the sky, big and bright, filling up the whole sky space, and still you say I am only this much. I am not bright enough because water is little dull and shaky. So it says I am only this much. I am shaking. Who is saying this? This one looking at this and feeling that I am this much. So this fellow who feels small is because of that bucket of water and the water inside. So what I am trying to say, that here also consciousness looking at the body thinks that I am only this much. The sentiency that is here, this I-ness rather, I-ness, I. Where does that I belong to? It belongs to consciousness. And where does this smallness belong to? 5 inches belong to? It belongs to the body. Combination of this two is this particular person. So and so. Follow? This is how the union. So, tadahankaha. So, we have to understand this very well, that ahankara or ego is what? Actually has no basis, but it is union. Chit jada granthi. When two people get married, then the sari of the bride and the kurtas of this one are tied together. It is called holy wedlock. But here the wedlock between who? Consciousness, chit, and jada. Body is jada, mind is jada, intellect is jada, pranas are jada, sense organs are jada, but they have come together. What kind of union is this? Unholy wedlock. Chit, jada, granthi. We call it unholy wedlock. Why? Because no good has come from this. It is like, now consciousness says, I am woman. Where does womanness belong to? Where does this manness belong to? It belongs to the body. You are not that. But still I say I am only this much. Why? Because the one who says I am only body is ahankara. In reality, that ahankara is nothing but consciousness, but thinks that I am only this much. When it says this, it is in two things, properties of two have come together. So this ahankara or ego is what they say, it is like an imposter. Imposter means one who imposes as someone. That I am so and so, I am big, is an imposter. So here ahankara is an imposter. Ahankara is an imposter in as much as he claims to be someone great. The one who has no basis at all says, I am this much, I am this, I am consciousness. It is like, in India, when the wedding season is going on, then the parties and the whole function goes for days together. And in one such wedding, what happened? That someone from outside got into this wedding hall, and he goes to the bride's party also and to the groom's party also. First, he is dressed up very well. Nobody would suspect that he does not belong to any one of these sides. And he goes to the bride's party and says, I am bridegroom's fast friend and we want such and such things. We want so much facilities, etc. So, the bride's people naturally, when the groom's side demands something, they are always, they want to listen to everything and they comply. Then he goes to the bridegroom's side and says that he belongs to the bride's side and demands something from them. Naturally, these people will also, they also complied with all his demands. Then what happened? A time came when the father of both the sides came together and they started inquiring. The father from the bride's side was bold enough to ask, who is this fellow? Is he the groom's friend? What kind of a friend is he? Keeps on coming and demanding things from us. I want golden finger and gold ring and this and that, etc. He is demanding big things. Then the groom's father says, we thought, no, he is none of us. We thought he is from your side. And this fellow says, we thought it is from your side. This fellow, the bride side says, we thought it is groom's friend. And the groom's father says, we thought it is bride's, someone from bride's friend. So, when they were inquiring like this, when the inquiry is going on as to who this fellow is, the fellow looked from the far and disappeared. Immediately disappeared. Similarly, we have to call a bluff of this ego. This ego means I am so and so. Inquire. Now let us inquire. Who are you? Is I a man which you claim to be? I says, I'm consciousness. I have no gender. I have no height. I have no weight. I am asangaha. And body is inert. It cannot even speak. It has no life of its own. Then who are you? Moment you inquire, then you realize, oh my God, there is no thing called ego. There is body, there is consciousness. These two are there, yes, but not combination of these two. If this is Drashta, Drashya, Viveka, when we have to separate, when we can separate these two, then there is no ego. Body, yes. Consciousness, yes. Fine, no problem. They are there, fine. Just as actor is there and he plays the role of beggar, fine, beautiful. Actor plays the role of beggar, good. But the problem begins when actor forgets that he is actor and says, I am beggar, and really cries and really begs, In the acting also he was begging, but he knew here that this is acting. But this now acting is forgotten and it has become reality. When you forget your reality, when you forget your identity, then the role which you are playing becomes a reality, as it were. Similarly, this consciousness, playing the role of a woman is one thing, but taking itself to be woman is another thing. You follow? So, now, having said this, now the text is inquiring further into what kind of association this ego has with three things. We will look into that, because once we know that, then we will be able to see the mithyatva, the fallacy of this ego. I am not the ego. Only when I come to know that will I gain my true nature. Today I am far removed from my reality. We want to come back to that, and for that we have to see how we are entangled in this. We have to disentangle ourselves. So what kind of entanglement is here? Association is here, that is being now shown in verse number 8. Let us proceed with that. Verse number 8. Ahankarasya tadatmyam chichaya deha sakshibhihi sahajam karmajam bhranti janyancha trividham kramat. See, now as I said, there is this union of ahankara and reflected consciousness. That means Atma, consciousness, takes himself to be the body. So there is some tadatmya, there is this identification. Between what? So the text says ahankarasya, that is ahankara means this I thought in the intellect. Please don't forget this, that in the intellect, in the antakarana has two aspects. Which two aspects? I thought and you thought. And it is I thought which is part of the antakarana, but the subtlest part, just as the water in the bucket is the subtle aspect which receives the reflection. Similarly here in the antakarana, that is sukshma, all these are synonyms, whether you call it antakarana or sukshma sharira. This sukshma sharira or antakarana has which part? Is divided into this two. I thought, aham vritti and idam vritti. In aham, this aham vritti is very subtle, is the subtlest aspect. Okay, so now what happens that this ahankara, aham vritti, has connection or tadatmya, identification with what? With three things. One is with reflected consciousness, another is with body, and third is with consciousness. Okay, it has tadatmya. Tadatmya means identification. So, ahankarasya tadatmyam chit chaya deha sakshibhihi. It has identification with these three. I will explain to you. One is chit chaya. Chit chaya means reflected consciousness. So, just as in the bucket of water, I am always going back to the example to make it clear. In the bucket of water, the sun has got reflected. So, the water part which can reflect the sun, that part is here called what? Ahankara. Now this ahankara, aham vritti, has identification with what? That reflection which has come here. It has association with that, number one. It has association also with the bucket, that is body, and third one, it has association with the sun also, which is in the sky. So these three associations are there. Of what nature are they? So the text says, first one is, respectively we have to see, sahajam, karmajam, brantijam cha, brantijanyam cha, trividam kramat. Kramat means respectively. How? Sahajam. So, tadatmya of ahankara with reflected consciousness is sahaja. Sahaja means natural. Then second one, I will explain. Second one, association or identification of ahankara with body is what? Karmajam. Karmajam means born of karma. So association of ahankara, aham vritti with the body is karmajam, born of karma. We will see all this. And third one is association of ahankara with consciousness. Is of what type? It is brantijam. So last one is very important. Brantijam. Atma, looking at the body, takes himself to be, I am of the size of the body. That is brantijam tadatmya. Then Atma, association of the Atma with this body. How long will it be? As long as the karma lasts. So that association is born of karma. Second one. And first one is sahajam. Sahajam means natural. You can't avoid it. What do you mean? That when the sukshma sharira, when the intellect is there and consciousness is there, then what will happen? Intellect will receive the reflection of consciousness. Just as when the bucket filled with water is there and the sun is there in the sky, what will happen? Sun will get reflected. You can't stop it. There is nothing wrong in it also. Understand this very well. When the bucket filled with water is there, lying outside, and sun is there in the sky, what will happen? Reflection is bound to come. Sun is bound to get reflected in the water, in the bucket. Why? I again repeat, if the water was not filled with water, bucket was not filled with water, sun would not have got reflected. But it is filled with water. Then water being water, it will receive the reflection of the sun. So what kind of tadatmya is there? What kind of association is that? Sahajam. Sahajam means it will get reflected. Moment water is there and moment sun is there, what will be born? Reflection will be born. Follow? This is called sahajam, that which is born together. Moment a bucket filled with water is kept outside and the sun is there, what will happen? You can't stop the reflection. It will get reflected immediately. Reflection will be born immediately. So that is the association of water and that sun. What, in which way? In the form of the reflection. That is one tadatmya. Tadatmya means coming together. Tadatmya means, identification. That is a better word, identification. Let me first explain to you this tadatmya. What is called this tadatmya? Because it is said, ahankarasya tadatmya. Identification of ahankara with three things. Which three things? Reflection, chit chaya, reflected consciousness. Second one, deha, body. And third one, sakshi. Sakshi means atma. These are all synonyms. Sakshi means atma, Brahman, consciousness, chiti, everything. So, ahankara has tadatmya with these three things. Since it has tadatmya with these three things, let us first understand the word tadatmya. Tadatmya means identification. Now, how to explain to you this? Tadatmya means fire and just as there was tadatmya between fire and what? Iron ball. They came together. They became, as it were, merged. That is called tadatmya. In other words, we can even explain tadatmya as supposing I am seeing a movie, Ramayana I am seeing. That movie Ramayana is going on. It was shown on the TV sometime during the lockdown period in India. It was shown. And when this drama is going on, TV serial is going on of Ramayana, and then Ravana comes, that part is going on. Ravana comes, Rama is sent into the forest, that Maricha shouted, and deer in the form of Maricha, he shouted, Rama, Lakshmana, and so Sitaji sent them. Sitaji sent Lakshmana also, now she is alone. And what happened? Ravana comes and kidnaps her. And she shouts, oh Rama, oh Lakshmana, and she shouts and cries and screams and what not, Moment you see this, what happens? She's crying there and I cry here. I also start, tears swell up here. Why? Because I got identified with that. It often happens, When we are watching cricket match going on, then if our side is losing or winning, both ways. If it is winning, then also we get identified. We start jumping here, watching the cricket match. And if we are losing, then we also sit with a long face. Our mood is gone, totally upset. All this happens. Why? They are playing that game so far away in Australia. And why? What happened to you here? Identification. Became one. So this is known as identification. These three types of identification are there of ahankara. What is ahankara? Aham vritti. Where is that? In antakarana. In which antakarana has two aspects, aham vritti, you, and I thought, you thought. This I thought has tadatmya. Let us say first with what? First it has tadatmya with chit chaya, which means that moment consciousness is there and this antakarana and I thought is there, immediately consciousness will get reflected here. You can't stop it. Just as you cannot stop the reflection of sun falling into the bucket of water because water is there. Or to give you another example, you cannot stop the bulb getting lighted moment that tungsten filament has, that electricity is there and tungsten filament is there in this bulb. Moment it comes together, the electricity will get conducted into this. You can't stop it. Similarly, moment that I thought is there, which is a part of the antakarana, and consciousness is always there, all pervasive, it is ever there. When that is there, then identification is what? A sahajam. Sahajam means it is natural plus it is born. Just as water reflects the sun, you can't stop it, you can't do anything about it. Okay, so this is one identification, sahajam. Then another one, this is the tadatmya of ahankara with what? What did we explain? With chaya. Chit-chaya means reflection. Moment intellect, I thought is there, it gets connected, identified with chit-chaya. And so I thought becomes what? Live. So far it was inert. But moment consciousness gets reflected in this I thought, supposing this is I thought and this is consciousness. Moment it gets reflected here, it becomes live, which means it is born. Sahajam, very natural, one thing. Then we come to another tadatmya, which is that, so this was sahajam. Tadatmya, association of I thought means ahankara with what? Chit-chaya, reflected consciousness, is what? Sahajam. It is sahajam, natural. It is sahajam. Sahajam means what? Inborn, it happens. Now we are passing on to the second tadatmya, which is that karmajam, born of karma. Between what? Then ahankarasya tadatmya, identification of ahankara with second one. What? Deha. Okay. Identification of this I thought with what? Deha. How did this deha come about? The deha which you get is because of the karmas. See, identification is already there between consciousness and this I thought. So now it has become life. But this I thought cannot function without a body being there. Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body or antakarana requires gross body, just as water requires a receptacle. It requires a bucket. Water needs to be held in something. Bucket is there and you fill up with water. So water, in order to function, requires what? A bucket or some receptacle, some container. Similarly here, intellect or the antakarana is sukshma. Sukshma means very subtle. You can't do anything with it. There are desires in intellect, in antakarana, yes, but to fulfill those desires, you require a body. You follow? If I want to eat something, if it is a desire has arisen in my mind to eat idli sambar, this is what I want to eat, South Indian dish. What do? I don't have a body. So, I need a body to fulfill that desire. You follow? Similarly, tadatmya of this I thought with deha is born of what? Is born of karmas. Body is a sukshma sharira needs a gross body. How did that gross body come about? Gross body comes as a result of karmas. These karmas are going on since beginningless time. Plus, in every life, we do different karmas. And that is how, because of those karmas, I get that kind of body. My body is in keeping with my karmas. So that I thought performs karma. But to perform karma, it requires a body. And in the past also it had done, so it got this body. In this life also it does, it performs karma, so it will get another body in future. You follow? We cannot say when did it begin. It is already there. Avidya, ignorance, is anadi. Anadi means beginningless time. So, this intellect, I thought, what kind of association it has with body? It has association with the body because of karmas. Because certain karmas bring about different kind of bodies. And this body is the result of past karmas. But the karmas which I perform in this life will become the cause of the body in the next life. Past karmas have given rise to this body. Karmas done now will give rise to future bodies. You follow? So, how did this aham vritti, how does this aham vritti comes in contact with the body because of karma, born of karma. So, coming together of I thought and body is karmajam. Karmajam means born of karma. You follow? It is only karmas by which we can explain as to why we are where we are, who we are, what kind of body we have, etc. All depends upon karmas. It is all result of karma. Okay, that much is seen. Now we pass on to the third one and the most important one. Because this association is already there. Only when we know how it has come about, then we will know how to remove it. We are interested in removing it. But then we should know the mechanism which has brought them together. We don't want this association. We don't want this identification of inert and of consciousness with this inert thing. We want to get rid of it. But as I said, if the I thought is there, then you can't stop consciousness from getting reflected here. That is sahajam, it is natural. And once it is there, it needs a body. So body will also be there. Now we talk about the third one, which is that ahankarasya tadatmyam sakshibhihi. Sakshi means atma. So now sakshi means atma or consciousness or chiti. Now what kind of identification do they have? This is very important. So the text says third one, it is born of Bhranti. Bhranti means delusion. Bhranti means misgiving, delusion. So what kind of thing is that? It says ahankarasya tadatmya with sakshi, which means that, I told you last time, sun looking at its reflection, what does it feel? Reflection in water. What does it think? I am small. I am small. I am limited. I am dull. Or I looking in the mirror, and what kind of mirror is there? Mirror is cracked and it is full of dirt. So I also feel, if I don't know, then looking at the mirror I feel, oh my God, there are so many cuts on my face and I'm so dirty because of the dust over there on that surface. I feel, what is this? The dust is not in me, it is there. It is there in the reflection, not in me. But this is Brantijam Tadatmya. Looking at the reflection, I feel I am full of cracks. Or sun looking at the reflection in the water feels I am only that much. Or to give you another example, electricity which is got conducted into this light thinks I am only bulb. Electricity, power, because of which this bulb is lighted up, thinks I am only this one. And I am limited to the bulb. I am bulb. What is this? What kind of association is that? Brantijam, born of delusion. Similarly, Sakshi, Atma, Sakshi means Atma, and this I thought. Moment Atma, consciousness, Atma or consciousness gets reflected in this I thought, what does it happen? It says I am body, I am mind, I am intellect. This is what kind of association? This is what kind of identification? Brantijam, born of delusion. Are you are not, you are consciousness, you are not woman. And this body has so many layers. It has subtle body and it has gross body. In that also we will see. Let us begin with the body. Body is one thing. Then there are pranas. Then there are sense organs. Then there is mind. Then there is intellect. In the intellect, I thought. With all of them, this consciousness gets identified. Looking at the body, it says, I am woman, I am man, I am child. And everybody is bullying me. What kind of consciousness thinks like this? This is Brantijam Tadatmyam, born of delusion. Looking at the vital air, what is the function of the vital air? Digestion and everything. And then digestion is not proper. So what does consciousness is? I have digestion problems. My stomach is aching. My stomach is upset, etc. Consciousness has no such problems, but identification. Then looking at sense organs, if the eyes do not see well, then what will consciousness feel? Looking at the eyes and its function. I do not see well. My eyes are not working well. Looking at the mind. What does consciousness say? Mind is now happy, then unhappy, then jealous, then angry. Consciousness says, I am angry, I am jealous, I am happy, I am unhappy. Identification. Looking at the intellect. I am bright, I am dull, I am doctor, I am engineer. Who feels this? Consciousness. Understand? Tadatmya. Consciousness getting identified here. So this is born of Bhranti. We will repeat, I will explain to you this again next time in case it is not clear. But please understand, of all these three, the last one is very important. If we can remove that, then the ground is created for removing the other two. So, take it very seriously, and in case it is not clear, I will repeat it again next time. Okay, thank you. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.